which is what we do. Okay, so we're the ones that are bringing in, seeing, we're the workers. We see all the suffering. We pray for, because the harvest is ripe and we are needing to bring that harvest in. Okay, Matthew 10:1. Jesus called the 12 disciples and gave them authority to drive out unclean spirits and to heal every kind of disease and weakness. And number 7, as you go, which means it's ongoing as we go every day, proclaim the kingdom of heaven is near, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those who are afflicted, and expel the demons. Now, think about it. Now, and first of all, since I can't see you, if you raise your hand, if you want me to repeat something, I'm going to say a lot of information. Hopefully, you've got notes. You can write things down because it's a ton of information. And if you want me to repeat it, raise your hand and Noreen will just, she'll scream, okay, or something like that. So let me know. Okay, so my point is that you as healers, us as healers and leaders, God has called us every day to do this. So I have this expectation that when I pray for somebody, I expect results. Now, years ago, when I started this, I was always hemming and hawing. Well, how far should I go? What if they don't? A little bit less confidence. And I didn't want to ask them, how are you doing now? After I pray for them, how are you doing now? Because what if they're not healed? What do I do next? Well, I don't have a problem with that now because I know there's something in the way. So as us as healers, I want to get your confidence level so high because you have enough tools in your tool belt so you know what to do next rather than feeling like I don't know what to do next and I'm afraid to go further, right? Because that shouldn't even be. You've got the, so here's the thing. My premise is that God can heal anybody, anywhere, at any time. I do a lot of phone healing, mostly now because I'm actually retired. Last week was my last day in my office after being in Masterpiece 31 years. So now I just do it online. So I prayed for people. See, I had one was it this week? Yeah, this past Tuesday, I prayed for a woman. I don't know where she was, Pennsylvania, I think. And it was online and she couldn't breathe. And she couldn't breathe for years. She was very obese, so she had a lot of aches and pains. She had a lot of trauma in her life, a lot of loss, and a lot of grief, which, by the way, is the connection to the lung issue, which we'll talk about that later. What I did is we went back to, there's 3 or 4 traumas that we released those traumas really quickly. What happens is she was able to get up and walk around, and she was able to take a full breath she hadn't been able to do in years. The whole thing took maybe about 20 minutes. So the point is that I want to get you to the point where you know where to go and you know what to do. All right. And if we don't, and it's about just doing it. Just do it the Nike way. All right. Put Nike way. All right. Just do it. All right. And the more you do it, the more confidence you're going to have. So, so the premise is I believe God can heal anytime, anywhere, anybody. But the issue that I'm going to talk about is what if they don't get healed? So here's one thing you got to realize. So anxiety, depression, physical issues, diseases, they're not of God. We can all agree with that, I'm assuming. I'm assuming you all can agree with that. And because it's not of God, you got to realize that anything not of God, that means it was given to us by a person or a circumstance. So even if I was born with something, it was still given to me. I mean, if it was given to you, think about it. You're smart people. If something's given to you, but it's not of God, that means it's not yours. God, God made you wonderfully made. He made you wonderfully, and He made you in His image. And it's all about what's heavens on earth here. We don't have to wait till we get to heaven. It's on earth now. But unfortunately, everything else around us, the hymns and everything, makes us think that we have to wait to go to heaven. No, when you pray the Lord's Prayer, you're praying on earth as it is in heaven. So we're supposed to have it now. So why don't we have it now? Is because we have a lot of things getting in the way. So you think about it this way, you've got to change your thinking about how you see illness. rather than illness is so powerful, you just realize that like it's part of who they are. So the younger I am when I receive a hurt or something that hurts me, the more I take that, and if there's nobody there to counter it, to tell me differently, even if somebody gives me hurt by an injustice, or they're yelling at me, or they're screaming, and I don't feel good about myself, or I get hurt, if nobody's there to comfort me, I'm going to take that hurt on, and I'm going to adapt my life around it. And then what'll happen is the longer I live with that hurt, the more it becomes who I am. Now, just so we get something clear, my first part of this, which is really going to be quick, because this is usually this is a 3 to 4 hour conference seminar, but I'm going to reduce it down to like an hour, much as I can. So the first part is based on this book, all right, which is hopefully everybody's got it, Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. All right. Now, and so the second part of this really was about the next book I have, which is more of an advanced book, is How to Pray When Healing Doesn't Happen. All right. It's a small book. It's very short, it's about 65 pages, but it's in advance about what you do, about the different stages. So definitely, if you don't have those books, get them, because it'll expand your knowledge base about this. So this is after years of using this, all right? So what I want to mention to you is that you've got to recognize that if it's not of God and they have it, you've got to recognize that it's not theirs. But let's talk a little bit about how they got it, because I want you to be so knowledgeable about where it's coming from that you know what to go after. So your first diagram is it's called the prayer flow. All right. So when you're looking at that prayer flow, you'll see on the left-hand side, you got the spirit, and in the middle, you've got soul, and then you've got body. All right. So for those that maybe they're not there, they're watching it online, when they don't have the information in front of you, I'll try to describe it so you understand. So it's like a pipe, it's like a prayer flow. And so when we accept Jesus to our heart, you have the Spirit enters us. And that's, John 7:38, where the Spirit flows within me. So the Spirit of living water, okay, that's the Spirit. So that's where the goodness is. That's the core. So when I'm accepting Jesus into my core, my prayers come from my spirit. Now, if you notice that between the spirit and the soul, there's a little valve. So you have to open up this little valve, so to speak, metaphorically, to allow your prayer to go through. They go through the spirit. Now, in the spirit is where it's the mind, will, and emotion. The mind, will, and emotion is where all the collective garbage can go that's not healthy. It's healthy or unhealthy, but that's where the unhealthy stuff is. And that's in that area. So you think about it, if I have a lot of hurt in my life, a lot of injustice, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of issues of unfairness, or issues of being abused, that's going to be in the soul. And so my prayers go through the spirit to get to the body. But if I've got a lot of soul stuff going on in my body, it's not going to go through, because the negative emotion will always be stronger than my logic to know better as an adult. Always. That's why people are knuckleheads when they're an adult. Like, what? That's why when you're as an adult now, you're around your boss, or you're around a friend, or your teenager especially, or your spouse, and like, what? Why are they acting that way? Like they're acting immature, or they have this adult temper tantrum, or they get upset, or slamming doors, or yelling, or swearing, or stomping their feet, or that's all those called adult temper tantrums. I mean, that's what little kids do, but adults do that because they haven't grown up emotionally. When you're standing in front of somebody and they have this kind of this temper tantrum thing going on. Like I said, slamming doors, yelling, arguing, like nonsense going on. And they're illogical in how they come across. A lot of overwhelming crying spurts. And I don't mean crying because somebody died, more like a tantrum. And they're an adult. Watch how they act. Watch. Look at how they are behaving and think about how old do they look? How young do they look like they're acting? That's the age that they had the trauma that they're stuck at emotionally that they're now doing in adulthood. So when you get something happen, like somebody not listening to you, something's unfair, you don't get your way, what happens is it triggers up old emotion that happened during the trauma earlier in your life, and that emotion gets stuck because it never got resolved. And then the emotion continues. I talk because there's men in the room. I'm going to tell you right now, the reason why your spouse or a woman brings up stuff 20 years ago, like, what'd you bring that up for? That happened 20 years ago. It's because men are so logical, it just kind of goes, the emotion doesn't stay there. But if a woman or a girl, especially, girls and teenagers and women, if women can't resolve an emotion that you as a spouse didn't allow to be resolved, they're going to hold on to that emotion and it's going to continue to come out until you help her resolve it by asking what she's feeling and keep your mouth shut as you're listening to her what she says. How's that sound? Now, that's a freebie, all right? That's my marriage stuff, okay? But that's a whole other seminar. But my point is, I can't see your faces there, like whether you're crying or what. But my but my point is that unresolved stuff does not go away. That's why it comes up. So have a person standing in front of you. They got issues. We all have issues. All right. Everybody's got an issue. The point is that our job is to help identify them. All right. So in front of you, you've got that prayer flow. Now let's talk about where that comes from. Trauma can happen as early as utero, and usually that's the way it is. I get a lot of people that God takes them right back to thinking of that something happened while they were in their mother's womb. Honestly, it happens a lot for me, right? So, and it can happen for you too. You just have to be receptive to something that's been going on. I'll give you an example. Okay, so there's this woman, 24. This is after prayer time, I guess. 24-year-old woman. She had a lot of anxiety. She wanted to get rid of it. She was on anxiety her whole life. Now, if you can't find something early in life, it's very possible it happened in utero because here's the issue. In utero, we're especially we know in utero we know whether we're wanted or not. We know we can, especially the 6 month. By the 6 month, a fetus is a hearing, feeling, sensing, seeing child. They can see light outside. They can hear what's going on. They can feel what the mother's feeling. If your mom was depressed while you were in utero, you're going to be born depressed. If your mother was anxious, you're going to be born anxious. And that's the beginning of ADD, panic disorders, anxiety disorders. So I've had it all my life. So this woman, it's because that's what you're given. And nobody's there to help reverse that. That's the problem. So this 24-year-old woman said she's not anxious her whole life. She was didn't know where she got it, especially when she drives. If she's in her car, she has more anxiety. So I prayed. He said, Lord, take her back to where she first felt this kind of theophostic thing. Sozo kind of does this, but it's just asking of God to bring her something that she knew from before, because it's not a now thing. You watch these people, look, most issues, if not 99% of what they're going through now, is not a now thing. They got it someplace else in their life. Okay, yeah, a dog bit them yesterday. Okay, so that's a now thing. But over time, if they don't get healed, then it's because there's something else going on. Because we're supposed to be healed. God created us as a very healing body. So I asked the Lord to take this woman back to where she first felt this. And God brought this story to her that her mom told her that when her mom was 8 months pregnant with this girl, woman, the mom had an accident. So the mom was driving, another car T-boned her, hit her right in the driver's side. And the mom was hurt, but the baby was not. But the mom had all this hurt and anxiety. And from that point on, the mom had a lot of anxiety. And basically, the anxiety was given to the girl because something bad's going to happen, because it did. So what happens is the adrenaline from the adrenal gland from the mom washes over the baby, and then the baby becomes anxious. And what happens is adrenaline, which creates the anxiety, makes us fast thinking. Adrenaline is a neurotransmitter hormone, which makes my mind think fast so I can either get out of there or I can fight. Problem is, you can't do anything. You're a helpless little baby, so you're just going to be anxious. And what happens is because the baby's anxious, the baby will pull adrenaline out of its adrenal gland because it's so small, it exhausts it right away. And when you have an exhausted adrenal gland, you're born with an exhausted adrenal gland, and that creates the anxiety disorder. It also creates ADD, or mostly ADHD, attention deficit disorder. And that's a whole nother story. I mean, it's in the back of my book, chapter 10. I talk all about that, ADD and fast thinking, where you're hyperactive. That can be from either in utero or it could be PTSD outside of utero, being born in a very high stimulus home where people are yelling and a lot of upset, and you don't know what's going on, and then you get upset about it, and it's called hypervigilance. All right. So I always go back to that. We deal with that. So what I did is I had her think of a comfort person. So you need to realize that this is psychology or physiologically 101. The earlier I receive a trauma experience, I will not let go of that trauma experience unless I have an equal or greater comfort experience to make me feel safe enough to let it go. So you can pray to the cows come home. Now, Jesus, I believe, will get rid of it. I've seen it. I believe Jesus will get rid of it anytime, anybody, anywhere. That's why when I pray, I expect them to be healed. But if they're not healed, it's because I'm holding on to something, because it became part of who I am so early in my life that I don't know any other way. So if I let it go, I don't know who I am. And so when we put her, I said, who's a comfort person along with Jesus? She said, well, Jesus and my grandma, because she knew her grandma was, obviously grandma wasn't there, but in her mind, she could think of grandma, the comforting of a grandma hugging her. So we get a discomfort experience. And if I had a comfort experience, I can get rid of it. She thought of that while she see Jesus giving her a hug, which is the love hug, this is chapter 10. Uh, Again, chapter 10 in Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. All right. So get the book. Get the book. Okay. So what you want to do is when you see that mom there being hugged and getting that love hug from them, which is basically what I talk about, and you reversing what I received. That's the key to a lot of this. It's all about love. Jesus was all about love. So love casts out all fear. This is 1 John 4:18. So love casts out all fear. Oh, so you got to recognize to let that go, something that was given to me. All right, that's really what it's all about. But so when I did that, she was able to release the emotion and the anxiety from when she got it because she could give it over to Jesus. She didn't have to carry it anymore because now she was safe. The whole thing took 10 minutes. After 24 years of being anxious, She wasn't anxious anymore. That's pretty quick stuff. All right, so let me go on. All right, so that's in utero. I got many utero stories, but that's just one of them. So we can go on to childhood. Okay, so childhood is also another big place where we get it, a lot of trauma, obviously. So think about it now. I want you to realize that a childhood, the external world, think about this. In childhood, the external world creates my internal belief of reality. So in my external world, what's going on around me creates my internal belief of reality. So if my dad's yelling at me as a child, that means somebody in authority I'm afraid. So I see my dad yelling, I hear my dad yelling, I feel that hurt, and then I believe that people, then the rest of my life, nobody makes that opposite. If nobody takes that belief away, see, because the what you see and what you hear, experience creates a feeling. The feeling creates the belief, not the other way around. That's why you can't change somebody's belief about something, even about religion, if you don't deal with the feeling, the emotion of why they even feel that way. It's so hard. So think about it. So I look at it this way. So you have an experience, your dad's yelling at you. It creates an emotion. Every experience creates an emotion, some kind of trauma emotion. The emotion then creates a belief, right? So I put away the image, the event of how I got it. Then for the rest of my life, if nobody's there, I live off that feeling and the belief that if somebody yells at me, somebody raises their voice, somebody looks a little mean, like my boss doesn't like something, I say to everybody, I don't like conflict. I kind of avoid conflict. And that's just the way I am. Like, what? What do you mean that's the way you are? Jesus didn't make you that way. Somebody gave that to you. So you're living your whole life of fear, like there's something wrong with you because you were given it and nobody takes you told different. The problem is if I live with this belief, this feeling, and then the belief, here's what happens. Satan comes in and makes that worse. Now, I don't do a lot of deliverance because I don't need to, and I'm not against it. All I'm telling you is that the spiritual way. Now, this is on page 53 in Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. Difference between emotional trauma and spiritual warfare. So I'm not against it because I know a lot of people do it, which is fine. They just don't go far enough. The problem is you can pray against Satan to start out with deliverance. So I don't because I don't need to. I'm going to tell you in a moment. So you can pray against Satan to get rid of Satan's influence. Okay, you get rid of it. You're going to feel better. But the problem is if you don't get rid of why he's there, the emotion, because trauma is the open door for Satan. Otherwise, if you have Jesus in your heart, he can't touch you. You've got everything Jesus has. I mean, it says it in the Bible that you've got everything Jesus has. So, and I won't get into the scriptures because you should know all that. If not, let me know later and I'll tell you. So what happens is, so you can pray for Satan to get out, and you're going to feel better. But if you don't deal with the emotion that he attaches himself to, then if you don't deal with that, he's gonna come back 7 times worse. So what I'm telling you is instead of going through because when you start praying and identifying Satan, you're just making him more powerful. You're giving him more influence because you're identifying him like he's got some kind of authority. No, he doesn't. He's already defeated. Go after what happened. I go after the back door. I don't go through the spiritual door. I go through the door of the event. Find the event, find the emotion, get rid of the emotion, get rid of, then the belief already comes back because the emotion of fear creates the belief that I have to be afraid. And then we live off of this and we keep on praying about this, about go to the cross. No, don't go to the cross. You've already been to the cross. Come from the cross. Look, Christianity is you receive Jesus in your heart, Understand? That's when you go to the cross, accept Jesus in your heart. From then on, it's from the cross. All the power, you have all the power, all the authority in Jesus' name. Use the authority. The problem is, I cannot believe in what I have unless somebody of greater authority believed in me first. I can't love somebody more. I can't love my spouse. I can't love myself. I struggle to love myself, struggle to love my spouse, struggle to love my kids. If somebody, unless somebody of greater authority early in your life loved you first and gave you that love, it's all learned behavior. So if you get somebody standing in front of you that doesn't feel good about themselves, I mean, yes, point him to Jesus. But the problem is, Jesus, they can't connect with Jesus because their first God didn't love them. Look, this is all based on Proverbs 22:6. Write it down. This is in the book, Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way they should go, and when they're older, they won't depart from it. All right. So you need to realize that God created us to receive something from a greater authority. So when we're born, we don't know who God is. God knew that. So in God's plan, his plan was he gave us a mother and a father. The father gives us our worth, the mother gives us our comfort. That's the plan. Now, recognize that I'm already good enough. The Bible says I'm good enough, I'm worthy, I'm made in his image, I'm wonderfully made, right? So he assigned us a mother and a father. That's the plan. That's supposedly the plan. And that mother and father is supposed to tell us about how wonderfully made we are. They're supposed to tell us Proverbs 20, to fulfill Proverbs 22:6, to tell us how wonderfully made we are. But guess what? Our parents, in their woundedness, only tell us what they know. And that's not usually very good. So I'm only going to learn about myself. Now, my dad was a pastor and he wasn't around much. I felt like I was the 201st child. He was taking care of all the other children in the flock, all right, which is all the people there that came to church and expected the pastor to take care of them. Well, this is back in the day when you go to seminary and you're supposed to take care of everybody. You're supposed to do everything in the church. And the problem is he did. He was a great pastor. I mean, he was there, he was around, but he was not a good lover. All right. My mom also the same way. My mom came from an abusive family, and I didn't realize all this till afterwards. So my mom was an at-home mom, great provider, but she was a terrible lover. She didn't hug us. Never did my mother hug us because she was the youngest of four kids. Her father was very abusive. Her mom, I just could go on and on. But that's the legacy. That's the Proverbs 22:6. So my wife and I have been to counseling a number of times over our 42 years because we both came from backgrounds where we didn't have a lot of loving. So it was love at first sight, but we didn't know how to maintain it. And that happens all the time. So my point is, if you have somebody that says to you, and they're standing in front of you, and they say, using these words like "not good enough," I'm bad, I'm hopeless, helpless, not loved, and just all these negative words, that's a victim mentality. Those are victim words. And what that is you need to recognize those are adult words with childhood content. That's not a now issue. If you have Jesus in your heart and you have everything Jesus has and heaven's on earth, you should be so glorified by what's going on and you should have so much joy in your heart. And if they don't, then you need to go back to where they didn't get it. Go back to their childhood. It's not an adult issue. All right. Now, so okay, so so you can get stuff in utero, you can get stuff in childhood, and if you hear them, if there's a lot of not good enough and I'm not loved and I feel helpless and hopeless, think about it, like if you own all the cattle and all the hills, like why are you so helpless? Oh yeah, because you grew up in a home where your mom and dad were helpless. money problems. Dad drank. There was a lot of yelling and screaming. There was a lot of hopeless and helpless going on. You got that image, that feeling. You got there was events, and then there was a feeling, and then there was a belief that I have to be helpless. So what I do is I say to the person, tell me about that feeling that you have that helpless. You get it very often. They say, yeah. And I said, do you feel it somewhere in your body? Yeah, like in my chest, my stomach, there's gloom feeling or tightness or upset. You go with that feeling. Okay, Father, will you take Johnny back to where she first felt this? Now, you need to realize there's two types of people you're going to be seeing. One is where there's a specific event, and we know how to deal with that. You go back to the event, put Jesus in that, get rid of it. Very easy. But what stumps most people in ministry is that what if I don't know where to go? I don't remember my childhood, or I don't have any memories, or I don't know where to go. That's easy enough. Just have them guess. Like, okay, so if you're feeling gloomy right now and helpless and hopeless about life, God, take them back to just think about your child and say, think about just being in your home as a little boy or a little girl. And what do you think it would be like living with the parents that you have? Just kind of talk about that. And I have them have Jesus with them, kind of let a little hug and a little love, little hug. I'll get to that a little later. And they're hugging each other, thinking about it. Well, my dad did yell a lot, and you'd be surprised. I said, just guess what it'd be like. Their guesses is always true because you're helping them dredge up what they don't want to think about because they put it away. It's called, in psychological terms, it's called disassociation. I disassociate myself from trauma. It's very common. That's a that's a mind trait. Okay. I do that to protect myself, but we do it all the time. And if nobody is there to comfort me, I'm going to do it. I will not release a negative past experience unless I have a current equal or greater comfort experience to be safe enough to let it go. Give you an example. So if you all have children or nieces or nephews and they're little young, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever age, think about this. When there's a trauma and they get hurt and they're crying, let's say they're running in the house and they trip and they fall and they get a rug burn. They wow, and they cry. You think about it. It's okay to cry. They should be able to cry. Never stop them from crying unless it's a outright over temper tantrum. But the crying, the younger they are, the louder they're going to cry because you're still getting used to hurt. They're trying to they're learning the level of pain. Okay, so they're crying and they're what do you normally do? What you should be doing? You go up to them and give them a hug, right? You give them a hug to say, "Oh, I'm sorry that you had to fall." That's the love hug, all right? And then you give them a little pat on the back. Okay, that's a little love pat. It's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. It's soothing. This is a universal sign of being loved. Now think about it. The people that are standing in front of you never got that. That's why they're still feeling like a victim because they never got an opposite reaction. So if you have a reaction from a trauma and never get an equal opposite reaction, then you're going to hold on to that trauma feeling the rest of your life. And you're going to always feel the same way, even in adulthood. That's the adult temper tantrum or the adult hurt. So, so think about it. If you know Jesus in your heart, and he's as big as he's supposed to be, and he overtakes anything. That's why are you still feeling the same way? Oh yeah, because it was given to you as a child, and you never resolved it. That's why Jesus was able to sleep in the boat when there was a storm all the way around him, and the disciples thought they were going to die. And they said, Jesus, wake up. Don't you care about us? We're going to die. The water's coming in the boat and you're sleeping. And he's saying, you men of little faith. He said, peace. And then he said to the water, be still. Remember, he had to speak to the environment and then to the water, right? He spoke twice. He spoke to where it was coming from and then to the result of what was happening. That's what we got to do. We got to realize there's a result. There's a place where it came from, and then you got to deal with the result. And so our job is to find out where's it coming from. So, and most of the time we deal with just the result. Okay, I have a pain in my back. Yes, pray for the pain in the back in the name of Jesus. Pain be gone in the name of Jesus. That's my first level of prayer. I expect them to be healed because it's in the name of Jesus. But my second level, which is what I'm teaching you now, is what if they don't get healed? What if the pain doesn't go away? Well, deal with unforgiveness, deal with any sin in their life, and deal with any demonic. Okay, and then pray again. And then if they don't get healed, it's always a soul issue, mind, will, or emotion. Find out why they're holding on to that because it's not theirs. They think it's theirs because nobody was there when it happened originally. This is all about 70% of people that I pray for, or 75% when I deal with. I don't even pray for them. I deal with the emotion. I don't even have to pray for them. The emotion is holding back that. That's why the American Center for Disease Control says that 92% of physical ailments have a psychological root. 92%. I think it's higher than that. That's all I deal with. Because most of the people I see are people that have not gotten healed over years. So let me give you another example. So this woman, 61-year-old female, she diagnosed with chronic heart failure, depression, feeling like I can't move forward, worthlessness, unworthiness, failure. She had angina, shortness of breath. She had a dystopic dysfunction, which is a heart not pumping correctly. So she had heart failure at 55%, enlarged heart, hardening of the heart. The doctor said, you have a stony heart because her blood pressure was 154 over 88. So supposedly, I mean, that's really not that high, but I mean, it's for her, it was hypertension. She was on 8 meds for right hip pain at about an 0 to 10 scale. She'd had this for about 7 years. Anyway, I said, what she felt like a failure. Again, what was the feeling that she was having from all of this? Unworthiness. So I asked the father to take her back when she first felt this way. She said her parents never cared for her. She did not feel accepted. She's not good enough. She was felt held back. She was abused a lot. Her her mother, father, and grandparents dying was very difficult. Seeing them die. She was not loved by her first husband. Poor treatment by her employer. Her father sexually abused her and verbally abused her. Anyway, so we went to each one of these things, and again, I put Jesus there and a comfort person. It was like a grandma was a comforting source. So I always have a comfort person or Jesus. It doesn't have to be a person. It could be an experience. Like I have a Marine, or he's not he's a former Marine. I've been corrected, by the way. When you're a Marine, you're always a Marine. Okay, so this guy is not an active duty Marine, but his comforter is his German Shepherd. So when he does his exercise, his German Shepherd's sitting next to him. He's going to bite anybody that hurt him, even in childhood. So he's all safe now. He's not really a Christian either. But my point is that and if you don't have a comfort bird, there are a lot of people who say, I don't have anybody in my life that I feel comforted by. Okay, well then see Jesus there at least in a bubble. It's in my book. I talk about it. See yourself in a big bubble, a plexiglass bubble, and I show them. I say, and it's about 2 to 3 inches thick, and it's in front of you, and you can see outside and hear outside, but they can't touch you. You're in this bubble, and Jesus is at least standing there. Even if they don't feel close to Jesus, you have to be careful because a lot of people might have been hurt and Jesus didn't save them. So they don't totally feel, they're going to tell you they do because you're an authority figure. But the problem is, I don't trust what people say about Jesus because a lot of people want to tell you what they want to know, what you want to know. because they don't want to look bad with Jesus. But in their heart, when they were 6 years old, they prayed to Jesus to stop their father from beating their mother, and it didn't happen. And she puts that feeling away. So what do you think is going to happen later on when there's a disappointment? You think they're going to totally, because that was not resolved. You think they're going to trust Jesus? Absolutely not. Okay, but the Bible says I'm supposed to, so I'm going to do that. The problem is that's why it's so difficult to push through, because they have this emotion inside of them, hurt, that even Jesus portrayed them. That happens a lot, way more than you think it is. So I tell you, when I ask people to find a comfort person, I say with Jesus. I don't put Jesus first as a comfort person. There's a lot of ministries that do, but they it's because they've never been in my position for 46 years hearing trauma from people, and they go down deep because I'm in my office doing therapy and I'm hearing people say Jesus was not there. But if you've got a 10-minute prayer session with somebody and you say, just put Jesus there and have Jesus take it away, they'll do that, but you won't get much result. Now, can Jesus do that? Can Jesus reverse it at that moment notice? Absolutely. So I trust Jesus. They don't. So if I try to give them the authority, try to help them, because I don't want them to be dependent on me. I want them to get the power. I want them to feel the power. You see, look, if I was hurt when I was 5, 6, 7, I don't care, 10, 12 years old, or even 15 years old, I'm in this helpless, vulnerable position. And when I'm helpless and hopeless because of a situation and I'm constantly hurt by somebody, then I'm going to feel that way the rest of my life because I'm powerless. That's a big word. If you go back to when you felt powerless in a home situation where mom or dad didn't protect me, I get a lot of times where my dad was mean, or my mom was mean, or my mom was sick all the time, and my dad had to work. I had a good relationship with my dad, but they didn't. But so I build up my relationship with the other spouse, with the other parent, because I need somebody to believe in. But the problem is that other parent didn't protect me from what I was getting. They might have come home, but they didn't talk to mom and say, Mom, say, like, spouse, why are you doing this to our son? Stop that. Well, it never happened. So really, I don't realize that I have two issues, one of the abuser and one of the non-protector. And the problem is I don't want people to use their parents as their safe people, because rarely that's the case. Once in a while it is. Anyway, so all right, so that's childhood even, all right? So now let's go to adulthood. Now, so in childhood, as I mentioned before, our external world creates our internal belief of reality. All right, I'm going to stop for a minute. Any questions so far of what I said? Anything you want me to repeat? Any questions about utero, about where stuff comes from? So when you're standing in front of somebody, typically what you're hearing, it's a now wording, but it's not a now origin of when they got it. So that's why I'm telling you. So don't knock your head against the wall trying to solve something that's an issue that started a long time ago. You got to go back to the root, right? So my motto is this. So I mean, if I saw everybody, I'd say, repeat after me, but find the root, give it the boot. That's my new motto. Find the root, give it the boot. All right, all right. Any questions so far?
Yeah.
Question
Hi,
here.
Craig, it's Donna, painter. Just wondering if you could speak a little bit more on what you just talked about when people say, well, Jesus wasn't there for me in the midst of my trauma, so I can't trust him to deal with this. I don't have any experience of him being there for me. Could you just elaborate a little bit more? You talked about someone else giving them a love hug and all, but of how to lead someone into that place of believing and knowing that Jesus is their ultimate comfort.
Yeah, good question. All right, yes, because it does happen often enough. Now, if you give people enough, relax with them enough and help them be honest, they'll tell you this. Otherwise, if it's a really fast prayer session and you're an authority figure and have them think of Jesus. I've seen this all the time. Well, think of Jesus being with you and see him praying there, taking it away. And they'll do that because you're an authority figure and you're telling them to do this. But if you take the time, and you may not always have the time, but if you can, take the time and ask them, and they'll not want to disappoint you, by the way, because they want you to think that they love Jesus. So it's not about loving Jesus, it's about being honest about yourself. So if they say then, well, I don't really trust Jesus, what you want to do is tell me what happened that would make you think that way, right? So because it's a learned behavior. I mean, you got to figure out where it's coming from. Now, so let me go a little bit back, and here's usually where it comes from. It could be there's two things that would bring up that reason that they don't trust Jesus. One is because they did pray early on, and Jesus didn't solve it, right? So so that would be one. Deal with that emotion of go back to the event or events in general that things are not going well. My parents got a divorce, and I prayed to stop it, and Jesus wasn't there, didn't stop it. Go back to the emotion from the divorce, not Jesus. The issue about Jesus is an afterthought. It's a result, not an origin. Okay, because we don't know Jesus when we're born. So let me finish that thought. I didn't finish it before. So because we don't know Jesus, we don't know God when we're born. God created our mother and father. Our father is especially our father is our representation of God. This is based on, I think it's, I believe it's 1 John 4:19. Yeah. I love because God first loved me. 1 John 4:19. So I love because God first loved me. Who's my first God? My earthly father. And so my earthly father is my first representation, not literally a God, but it's my representation of a God. So how I get along with my earthly father, how I'm loved, how they love me, how we resolve things, that's my learning curve, my role modeling to what it's like to a heavenly father. It's very difficult to feel loved by a God you don't see when you're not loved by your first God that you do see. This is I talk about this in my book, when feelings don't come easy. It's a blue covered book. It's When Feelings Don't Come Easy, and it's about my earthly father and my heavenly father. So anyway, so what you want to do is, if my earthly father yelled a lot or he was distant, then I'm going to feel distant. Then I have no role modeling to what it means like to be close. Think about it. It's just, this is human nature. This is just human nature 101. I have It's all about learned behavior. Look, we're only born with temperament. Temperament is strong-willed or compliant. My learning curve is I take that temperament into the environment that I live in. Who creates the environment that I learn from? My personality is created from the environment I grew up in. My parents, my caregivers, create that environment out of the role modeling of what they give us. It's either good or it's bad. And again, they're supposed to give us what God already gave us. We're already good enough. We're already wonderfully made. We're already made in God's image. Our parents' job, Proverbs 22:6, is to tell us what God gave us. But unfortunately, they didn't. And that was my example about my dad he was a good man of God, but he was not around. And so to me, I had to learn how to have a God who was around. I'm still working on that. I'm still working on the presence of the Lord. Okay. And so, and so go back to, so somebody, God wasn't there, or I feel angry and so on, then ask them about growing up in a home where they felt, what was it like living in your home? What was it like with your mom and dad? Well, I don't know. I don't have a lot of memories. Just guess. What do you think it would be like? Seeing yourself there. We're just seeing yourself there and just do this anyway, tap like this. And I'll tell you why this is significant, but have them think and guess about what it's like in little dialogue, just a small dialogue about what it's like. And you're going to pick up on stuff about what it was like, and probably it's not good. And the fact that they don't even remember, that means that it was not good, because we disassociate ourselves from stuff that's bad because our mind doesn't want to remember it because we want to let it go. All right. So deal with the emotion that creates that result. Yeah, is that helpful?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
I
helpful.
always do that. So if a person doesn't have a good relationship with God, it's typically because they never had a good relationship with their earthly mother and father, who create their sense of comfort and worth, and
Yeah.
who create the role modeling for what it's like to have a relationship. Look, this is in my book, really quickly on this topic about relationships. This is in my book, When Your Mate's Emotionally Unavailable.
Yeah. I was just,
Well, hold a minute. Um, listen, when we're born between 0 and 3, we look to our mom as the most important because a mom gives comfort. It gives comfort and protection and breastfeeding and so on. So we get that comfort. That's what we're supposed to get that from the most. Around between 3 and 4, children push their mother away and they start looking to the father. The girls then want to marry this man, and the boys want to emulate them. Like that's why they want to buy they want the plastic lawnmower and all that stuff. And then at 11, at puberty is when their brain starts developing, and they're just emotional beings. If they have a lot of emotion and a lot of trauma, a lot of emotional overlays going on, we call it pathology. A lot of a lot of emotionality. Typically, they were hurt under 12, oftentimes more so, unless it's rape trauma, a lot of that stuff after 12. But the point is that at puberty is when my brain literally first starts developing. And then I put 2 and 2 together, that if my dad comes home yelling under 12, I must have did something wrong. It's always I. Children are very narcissistic under 12. So if somebody comes to you, is in front of you, and they have a lot of poor self-esteem, not feeling good about themselves, and it's really plummeted, then and there's a lot of fear. Typically, in that time frame, they got a lot of fear because nobody reversed it. Nobody was there to comfort them, to say, no, your dad is just a nincompoop and he's having a bad day at work. It has nothing to do with you. Other than that, it's always my fault. Now, after 12, at 13 years old, I'm thinking like, wait a minute, I haven't seen my dad all day. He comes home mad and I haven't been with him. So it must be something to do with work. So that there's that association a little bit better. And so I can put the pieces together, but I still need someone to make sense of it. All right. And that's part of our job, because if nobody still was there at 13 on up, then we still have to do it. So that's why you want to listen to what they say and watch. If it doesn't make, listen, you're all smart people. I know that because that's why you're here watching it, because you want to learn more. If it doesn't make sense, give it permission not to make sense. It's not about sense. It's about emotional nonsense that they're still living in from childhood. So we go
excellent.
back to that and get rid of that. Put a stable person like a grandmother who was loving, just like we would do. They never got the love from a parent to reverse the trauma that they received. This is the issue. That makes sense?
Yeah, can I say one other thing? Yeah,
Sure.
I appreciate all you've said there. What I was sort of focusing on is something that does come up in the prayer room quite frequently, where someone might say, you know, maybe the person was raped or had some traumatic experience and says, well, you know, Jesus didn't prevent that from happening. Jesus wasn't there for me. If Jesus is this God of love, why didn't Jesus save me from this awful thing that happened? Because that does
All
come.
right.
So I
All right.
just,
Well, I'll go back to this. Ask them what the feeling is because of that. I feel really angry. All right. So go with that. Now, here's the problem. What they do is, like, you and I know, because we're at a different level of logic. We know that God would not allow that to happen. And that's not who God is. We know that. So think about it. But when we're in front of a person, like realizing it, it's too bad they think God would want that to happen because we know that's not the him. What I'm trying to emphasize to you is that it's not about God. It's about their first God that wasn't there for them. So they're taking that, like, where was their father and mother? So if they were raped or mishandled, whatever, either by that father or somebody else, where was their first God who should have protected them? Because we don't, as a child, we don't understand this protection part. We don't understand that relationship with God. You got to get a handle on this. Is that because I don't? It's all learned behavior. The reason why we go to church half the time is to listen to a sermon to learn what it's like to have a relationship with God. That's your father's responsibility and your mother's responsibility. If they didn't do that, then I don't realize that the feeling I have about even if I was raped shouldn't be God's it shouldn't be God's fault. It should be somebody else's fault for not being there for me. God still loves me. But what I do is I take this feeling, early feeling, and then I attach it to God. Now we know that that's an unfair thing to do because God didn't cause this and God wouldn't cause it. Somebody else caused it. It was given to them by somebody, not by God. Now we know that, but that's logical thinking. Their emotion gets in the way of their logical thinking. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Or okay, so it's a very uh maybe you need like more practical. I know it's hard because you got a person in front of you, they've got a lot of emotion. But I see this all the time. If you decrease the amount of primary emotion that they feel of being abandoned or being betrayed by God, we know at a logical level that God wouldn't do that because he's a loving God. But somebody did. There was somebody in their life. It's typically their first God or somebody important to them that wasn't there for them. And it's usually go work on that. And they'll at first they won't understand why you're doing it that way. Like, but if you stay on that, this feeling of not being loved by God is a result of not being loved by somebody else, not by God, because God remember, my relationship with an unseen God has everything to do with my relationship to begin with people that should have loved me. I have a heart, I will struggle to feel loved or protected or believed in unless I have a my original authority figures believed and loved and protected me first. It's all learned behavior. Because otherwise they're we have to learn how to have a relationship with our Heavenly Father. Do you agree with that?
Greg,
Yes.
what if you hear this? Well, referencing parents, they really did the best they could.
Say it out loud, a little louder.
They really did the best they could.
Oh,
That's
the
what
parents?
so many times. Well, they did the
Yeah,
best.
like they said, my parents did the best they could.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And I say, what was it like to live with your parents? What was it like to live then? And what do you think a little girl or boy would be feeling living in that situation? I get that a lot. And once you have them dialogue it a little bit more, they finally realize that they should have had more. See, look, let me explain it this way. Okay, so this is a child, this is the adult. Love, respect, honor, all comes from top down. That's what it's supposed to do. I learned how to trust, how to love, how to respect, all by role modeling. All right, like bias or swearing. It's like where do kids get stuff from? They get it from someplace. But if my parents were busy or they didn't know how, I'm going to go from bottom up. I'm going to make it love. I'm going to make it do the best I can. I'm going to clean the house, hoping my parents will love me if I do good enough. Performance comes out of that. Um, performance comes out of that in terms of is the more I do, a lot of women especially come out of that. So I will create a loving parent. So I will think I get all the time, my parents love me until I get to the point like, what did they do to love you? They were there, I said, did they kiss you for no reason? No, I mean, maybe when I went to sleep, or did you get hugs and hugs from them for no reason? Well, no, they didn't really hug me. So, but children need to have a belief that they're loved. Otherwise, it's very, very hurtful. So I create it for them. The problem is I will help them see then what did they do to create that love. And usually if they're a parent now, they say, what do you do now to show? Well, do you hug your kids? Oh yeah, I absolutely hug kids all the time. Well, it's because you love them, right? Yeah. And do you kiss them? I kiss them all the time because I love them. Okay. So is that showing that you love them? Yeah. Did your parents do that? Well, no. Well, that doesn't mean your parents didn't love you. I just believe your parents didn't know how to love you. The problem is you believed greater than them.
Yeah, good, thanks.
So let's deal with the emotion. What would it be like for a little boy or girl living in a home where they didn't get hugs? What do you think it would be like? What if they didn't get kisses? What if you didn't? And I always have to bring it to now in the sense of, so I tell you what if you stopped loving your children? What if you stopped hugging them? You stopped kissing them? Just stop. What do you think that would do? Well, that would devastate them. I mean, they'd be hurt. Do you think that's the way you might have felt? And then there's silence.
Good, good stuff. Thank you.
So what happens is now I just learned this over the years. Okay. And now granted, it's not an easy thing to do, but you've got to deal with the emotion that makes them make I have a lot of people that put their parents on pedestals because they have to. If not, then what do I have left? Abusive parents? And by listening to them that the parents were not good parents. Now, our job is to not to tear down the parents, and you got to give them something to hope for. And I say, so that's why I say, look, so I don't put the parents down. I just help them see that the parents just didn't know. But you still weren't loved. And that's why you have difficulty with Jesus, feeling loved with Jesus. That's why you have difficulty trusting Jesus, because because you didn't get something to learn how to that. And so this is not a matter of Jesus, it's a matter for your parents. Then it starts clicking.
Craig, a follow-up to that. This is Ron, to Skip's point about, I've seen this in the prayer room as well, where the response is, well, they did the best they could, or the best they knew how. And I read, it might have been in your books, somewhere along the way in my studies, that that's okay, but that's not good enough. You needed more than what you were getting. Do you understand that? Do you realize that they didn't give you what you needed? And now maybe there's some unforgiveness that's required to say, mother, father, uncle, whatever, I do forgive you for not giving me what I needed. And
Yeah. And okay, now I totally agree with that. Okay, so let me add to that. That was excellent. So start with the emotion. What do you think it would, before you get to unforgiveness and forgiveness? Because oftentimes people have 100% of the time, I still have unforgiveness because I have an emotion that makes me not forgive. So so go back to so you'd say to them, that's why you love your children more now, is because you know better now, but you didn't know then. So help that little boy and girl out. Let's help free that little girl and little boy from feeling hurt in a way that you don't want your kids to feel. So what do you think that little girl or boy would have felt if they were in the situation of not being loved? So I always equate it to now. So if you didn't love your children, you know they need love, and look at their response when you hug them. So what if you stopped? What if you never could give them love? What do you think your kids would feel like? Oh, they'd be devastated, be hurt. So I help them to think of that and then take that feeling back to them being as a child. 100%, it works wonderfully. See, because it's really amazing how we avoid ourselves from what we went through in the past, but we have the reality of what we're in the present. It's like I get this a lot. My dad and mom, they're great people now. I have a good relationship with them now. Like they were really hurt by them, neglected or abused, but it's a better relationship now. It's because my adult self can work it out. But the little girl in me or boy in me couldn't. So I'm still hurt with that. So that's why I'm very cautious of people. I don't trust. I get upset a lot. I have an uneven temper or uneven, how I moodiness is because I'm still dealing with my childhood stuff that was never resolved because my adult self can overcome it more, but it only works for so long. So hopefully that helps.
Thank you.
All right, any other question before I move on? Because I want to go on. Okay, so real quick then, remember the childhood external world creates an internal belief of reality. All right, so whatever's going on around me makes me feel like there's something not right, and then I take that in. I take believe like if my father's yelling, then when somebody yells, I feel afraid, and then I become afraid. I don't like conflict, so that turns in I don't like conflict. I don't like people raising their voice. And then what happens? Oh, there you are. Look, there's people out there. Okay, so when then as an adult, we take that into adulthood, and adulthood is then the next step where my internal beliefs then determine my external reality. So if I then had fear from my dad yelling, and then I'm going to believe that when somebody raises their voice as an adult, when somebody raises their voice, then my reality is that I'm supposed to be afraid. So if there's somebody standing in front of you that has a lot of fear about something, or how they talk about people, or they can't deal with life, is because they never learned how to deal with life. Find out the origin of that. So I'm emphasizing this just to say that whatever when somebody doesn't make sense, like they shouldn't be going through this, they shouldn't be feeling this way, they shouldn't be responding this way, they shouldn't have that going on, then recognize that they probably got it early, they got it earlier in life, and they're still dealing with it, right? So the next thing is, let's go to the next slide real quick. If you're able to do that. And yeah, there you go. Real quick, I'm going to go over this. So that's why number one, you want to listen to what they say. If it doesn't make sense, if it seems like it's worse than it should be, the amount of trauma or the amount of response that they have, usually it is, find out the origin of where they might have felt that way before. The second thing you want to do is, this is also my book, and this is basically in the back. I talk about this. This is in your prayer card. You should have this in your folder. When you're with somebody right now, they're going to tell you what they may feel, either anxiety or their back issues or whatever, problem with their shoulder or their heart. So that look at the location. So the second thing is, what's the location of their issue? Now, I've done a lot of research with this. In the back of my book, there's 400, on the back of course, this one, Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing, there's 450 or 60 medical and mental health diagnoses. And with every diagnosis, which is a condition, there's an emotional paragraph. There's a paragraph of emotional statements like not being good enough, holding in feelings, afraid of this. So after you do all your first part of praying with them and that something doesn't work, like unforgiveness, like releasing the trauma, asking Jesus to take it away. Then you do unforgiveness, and then you do any demonic issues, or then any other sins, releasing sins. If it still doesn't work, there's usually an emotional issue. It's usually soul issue. This is the soul stuff, all right? In addition to soul stuff. So that's why in the back of the book, there's always an emotional connection to it. Because our body is a made up of energy. Everything has energy. God created it that way. This is not new age. Everything has energy. I mean, and that's why when you go to the hospital and they do an EKG or an EEG or an echo, a myelogram, whatever it is, all they're doing is measuring the amount of energy flow in your body. When there's no energy flow, you're flatline. When you're flatline, you're dead. All right. So that's why you think about it. Every part of your body, even the rocks cry out, everything has energy. Every part of your body has an energy source, and they have an energy, and the energy has a frequency. And we call it a resonance. It's a frequency. Every emotion has a frequency, all right, because it's an energy source. You know, crying and all that, anxiety, that's all energy source. And so what happens is, and this is after a lot of research, it's not new age, this is how God created it. That's why the energy from an emotion has a frequency. And if that emotion is not released, it's not resolved, and you're still holding on to it, that emotion will then settle in the body at the same organ or part of the body with the same resonance, same frequency. For example, a big one is the lungs. So the lungs have a frequency. Loss and grief have the same frequency as the lungs. 100%. I get people healed really quickly when they have a lung problem, like a consistent cough, or they can't get over something, or can't breathe. That's what the example I gave you when I started. This woman had a lot of losses in her life who she had lung. She couldn't take a breath. So one of my other famous, well-known one about many years ago, I had a client come into my office, and the doctor, his medical doctor, told him to go get counseling. So he comes in my office. He's walking down the hall to my office, and he's short of breath. I mean, he's like this close to being on oxygen, and he couldn't stand. He couldn't go upstairs very long without needing to take a breath. I said, "How long have you been having a lung problem?" He said, 7 years. Now, I was like, "What happened 7 years ago?" Well, 7 years ago, I had to leave my job because my doctor said he worked at a foundry in Detroit. And so he was, in other words, he was, even with a mask on, he was uh, melting molten steel, to make car parts. And so the doctor said, if you don't get out of there, you're going to die because it's filling up in your lungs. Well, the guy, he prayed for and so on, but nothing really happened. He was very short of breath. So I said, now I know that loss and grief is connected to the lung issue. So I'm saying to myself, thinking, like, I asked him, I said, what else happened around that time? Because God created our bodies to be healed. We're supposed to release stuff. We're supposed to let things go. That's why we laugh, we cry, we sweat, elimination. It's all releasing, but none of that happened. So what else happened? He said, well, the same year that I had to leave my job, which he regretted. He didn't want to leave his job, but he realized he had to. My wife divorced me, and she took the kids out of state. He says, it devastated me. There's the word. So what happened is he lost his job, he lost his wife, he lost his children, he lost his manhood, he lost his family. Like, this guy had so many losses. So I went through each one of the losses and the emotion he felt from that loss. And I just, for the sake of making it look good, I had a quick prayer over his lungs, and his lungs cleared right up. Right in his, it took half an hour. Now, the point is that that's what we got to go after. We got to go after what we're hearing and what we're seeing. And so I realized that there's a connection. Now, I don't have all 450 memorized. I actually go to my book a lot of times. I have people that have it on, they have it on their cell phone. Because this book, Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing, it's audio, Kindle, ebook, paperback. And so they have it on, I guess they have it on Kindle. They have it in their cell phone. So they show them like, hey, do you have any of these issues for these emotions? Yeah, I got that one, that one, and that one. So you pray with those issues and they get healed. So what I'm doing, this is just one more thing. Now you don't have to memorize all this, but that little form you have in front of you, that's like most of them. Those are ones that you're going to hear about the most. Like back issues. 80% of Americans have back problems, right? And it's very, very common. But the emotional connection to back injuries is lack of. Look, our backbone, our spinal column is the most important structural part of our body. We can't sit, stand, or walk without this structural support of our spinal column. So guess what? The major emotional issue that's, if it's not resolved, will create or keep you to have back issues. It's lack of emotional support. I see this all the time. It could be from your parents and your spouse. Usually it's an accumulative effect. So you listen to what so it's an emotional issue. It's that soul part, is part of the soul that's going on, that I'm holding on to emotion. Now that's why the Center for Disease Control says that 92% of physical ailments have a psychological root. You got to go after the emotion after you do all the other things. So don't stop praying how you're praying. This is not to replace anything you're doing. This is just to add to what you're doing if they don't get healed, okay? Any questions with that so far? Then I want to go on to now how we do this. Any questions so far? Now that's a lot of information. Do you want to take a 5-minute break at all, or do you want to just keep going? What do you want to do?
5 minutes.
You what?
5 minutes.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break. All right. All right. So we got the prayer card in front of you now. So get that in front of you, this thing.
The other side.
So our first, obviously, pray normally the way you've been taught, how your center prays. So do what you normally do, expecting to be healed. And if they're not healed, then it's something that I talk about this in my book. Now, again, this is in Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. I think it's on page 85 or 83. But it's more detailed in this book when healing doesn't happen, how to pray when healing doesn't happen. So I would definitely read both the books, but read this one first, and then read this one next. Okay, so you would then, if they're not healed or they don't get fully healed, you want to ask them, when did you first have this condition or feeling? You might have already asked this. They'd say, like, it did this man with the lung issue 7 years ago. Now, if the event is in adulthood, find an earlier time. If the condition, if what they're talking about in the event or the condition is in adulthood, find an earlier time when, they might have felt that way, or they might have, like, for example, like that's what I did. I said, how long ago did you have this issue? You said 7 years ago. But then what happened at that time? Now, you're going to have two types of people that you're going to see when you ask these questions. The first type of person is where it's what I call episodic events. They're going to talk about like an event that happened. Like I had a car accident 10 years ago. Go to the car accident and pray over that specifically. And you may have already done that. The second one, though, is the person, and then And then let's use the car accident first. So that's called in my book, this is just a real, this prayer card is it's like a Reader's Digest quick version of it. It's like a cliff note. It's a little bit explains better in Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing in chapter 10 and in step number 2. So when you have the person and you say car accident and you pray about the car accident and they're still not healed, find out so you want to find out what was the emotion like during the car accident. So that's number 2. Rate the amount you feel the condition in the mind or body, 0 to 10. You always want to get a rating, at least I do, because you want to get a measurement of what the feeling because of what happened or the emotion, even if they're anxious, like what's the feeling? What's the amount? 0 to 10. The reason is when you pray for them and then you ask, what do you feel now? 0 to 10. They can tell you. So it was started at 10, then it's an 8, then it's a 6. If you don't have a rating scale, then you'll say, if you ask them, how do you feel now compared to what? Oh, I feel better. Well, most people stop. And a lot of people don't even want to ask that because what if they're not healed? Or what if it's not less? Well, I just keep on going after it. So rate the amount. So you would start rating the amount at the moment they say the car accident, the fear that I had was a 10. And then you pray over that fear that they had. All right, now, but here's what you want to do. And number 3, this is one of the most important parts that is totally missed. So number 1 and 2, you do that typically anyway when you pray for people. Then number 3 is what I want to emphasize, which is not typically done, which is where I get my results. So number 3 is you picture a safe person in the memory protecting or hugging you. All right, now, remember my example of the little child. Why do you think children 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 7, 10, 12 years old, after a hurt, when you hug them, you give them a love hug, a little love pat, like it's going to be okay. Why do they get healed so quickly? Why do they go back to homeostasis so quickly? I'll tell you why. All right, so everybody was born with 5 senses. Everybody. As a child, because it's so new and they're so vulnerable, when I have a hurt, even if somebody yells at me, when I'm hurt and that injustice or pain comes, I shut down at 100%. All 5 senses shut down at 100%. When somebody comes along and hugs me and comforts me, I relax because comfort creates safety. Safety creates love. Remember, love casts out all fear. This is true. And in Proverbs, it talks about love casts out all offenses. So when a child is feeling comforted, they feel safe with a person. And then when I feel safe, I relax. My senses relax and I open up all 5 senses, and all 5 senses get healed at 100%. And then I can go play again because now it's gone. I kissed a boo-boo or whatever you do to make them comforted. It's gone. The people that you are seeing in your office or in the healing room didn't get that. So our job is to give them now what they didn't get then. We're still using 100%. But one thing you got to realize, the 3 out of the 5 senses, 3 of the senses that produce emotion the strongest is physical trauma, visual, what I see, and audio, and then taste and smell. So what I do is I want to create using as many senses as possible. See, when we do prayer, healing prayer, maybe we use maybe 1 sense, maybe 2, and we do it haphazardly. I want to really get a sense of being all 5 senses. That's why children 100% shut down. when we comfort them, they feel that comfort so real that it makes them feel safe, so real. And then they feel loved, so real that love casts it out. If we don't get that, well, we have a hard time to feel love the rest of our lives, especially when somebody tries to comfort us. And to me, it's fake. And that's why I have a hard time feeling loved by God. And that's why I have a hard time feeling that God's going to make me safe, because my first God did not do that, because my senses were shut down so much. By the time I become an adult, I don't have a lot of senses that I use much. It's not safe. Nothing's safe. This is just physiologically psychology 101. I mean, that's all I do in my office is try to make people safe again so they can go back to homeostasis. That's why everything is so hopeless, because it was hopeless before, because I had to get out of it on my own. I had to grow myself up. No one was there to love me. I didn't know what love was. I created the love because I never got love from my parents. So I created. So it's all about what I can do. So it's a hard time getting it from somebody else. Anyway, I could go on and on about that. So my point is, so I say to people, this is on number 3, I say, besides Jesus, because I'm assuming everybody's got a relationship with Jesus their own way. What I'm trying to find out is, who could you put there, or what could we put there to create a sense of comfort? Said, is there anybody in your life that you have felt comforted by? And I always start with grandparent, aunt and uncle, friend, pastor, an animal that you felt comforted by. Most of the people say a grandparent or grandparent. And then you go from there, friend. Right? They say it could be childhood or adult. You could have a good friend now, just somebody that you feel safe with. So all you're doing is create an opposite. You're creating okay, so I have number 1, I have the using the love hug. So I have them sensing that love hug. So I'm creating a sense of love. Secondly, then I want to do the little love pat. We'll tell you why in a moment. Like, it's going to be okay. But then I want to create the sense of being comforted. Again, if there's nobody, you could have a spouse. You could have, like I said, I have kids I have people that use like their cat or their dog or their stuffed animal. It's a sense of what I feel. So I'm just so I will struggle to let go of a negative, hurtful experience early in life unless I have a equal or greater comfort experience later on to make me safe enough to let it go. And it's true for any time. That's why your kids let it go so easily. Does that make sense? Okay, so you have a person that's doing that feeling of love. So I want to really emphasize this. I need to say this really quickly. Where does this? I've never got this question, but if it does come up, where is this in the Bible? Where is this releasing this love stuff in the Bible about releasing, other than love casts out all fear? If you need to know, I'm going to go over it real quickly. Normally, I spend a lot more time on this. I spend a lot more time on a lot of this stuff. It's Matthew 26, and it's Matthew 26, 37 to 44. All right. So if you need to write it down, so you can look at it later, and I'll tell you. And then Luke 22, 43 to 47. It's they're so, and this is a story about Jesus at the garden, and Matthew and Luke, they both say it, but they say it differently. So, for example, real quick here. So when Jesus came from the upper room with his disciples, he went on to the Gethsemane. He told the disciples, "Sit here while I go there to pray." This is Matthew 26, 36. And then 37, he took Peter and two sons of Zebedee with him and began to be grieved and distressed. He said to them in verse 38, "My soul is deeply grieved to the point of death. remain here and keep watch for me. So number one, he knew it was in his soul. And number two, he knew he was grieving. So in verse 39, he went beyond them and he fell on his face and said, Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. He didn't want to die. He was human, remember? Who wants to die? But he was grieving so badly, he felt like he was going to die. Then he said, well, not my will, but your will. So Jesus had emotionally struggled over what he felt by grieving to the point of death. That was bad. So in verse 40, he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. So as a human, he wanted support. So he gets up and he goes over to his disciple friends and sees them sleeping. And he says, could you men not watch for me for 1 hour? Keep watching and praying for me so that you do not come in temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. In other words, I need support here. Like, why are you? I want support from you, and you're sleeping on me. So he didn't get the support, just like we don't sometimes. So the second time he goes back to praying again, verse 42. He went a second time, prayed, my Father, if this cup cannot pass from me unless I drink from it. So he's negotiating with the Father, saying, look, I don't want this. All right, so then he paused, your will be done. And then a second time he went back to the disciples to get support, and they were sleeping again. And he told them, can you pray for me? He went back a third time to pray to the Father. Now, this is where you want to pick up on Luke 22. Now, in Luke, he gives you, because you're a physician, he has a different angle, different perspective. And Luke 22:43, it says, now an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. In some translations said, comforts him. You need to recognize that because Jesus was so hurt to the point of death, he was grieving, what happened was the Lord and his Father saw this and heard this. He sent an angel to comfort him. And because he was comforted, go to verse 44, and being in agony, he was praying fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling down upon the ground. Okay, so what that means is Luke saw that he was sweating blood. Now, this is a phenomenon called hematidrosis. Hematidrosis is a medical phenomenon. It's in the medical dictionaries that when I'm in tremendous agony and stress, what happens is the blood capillaries are so close to the sweat gland in our skin that when the blood is flowing and the blood capillaries burst, the blood goes into the sweat glands, and then you have blood in the sweat. So it's not drops of blood; it's just sweat with blood in it. And Luke saw that on his face, and he knew that's what was going on. The others didn't, of course. That's why he's the only one that talks about this. And so after that, after he let go, and sweat became like drops of blood falling down the ground. Verse 45, when he rose from prayer, and he came back to the disciples and found them sleeping in sorrow. And he said to them, why are you sleeping? Get up and pray that you do not come in temptation. And then, of course, in 47 is when the crowd came, and then he was betrayed by Judas. So, but my point is, in amazing stress that Jesus had in his soul, he was not able to move forward and do God's will and move forward to do his work until he was comforted and then released the pain, the agony that it was feeling. That is our example. And so we need to help the person that we're with do that. So a couple of things is that's why you want to you need to create something to help them feel comforted. Now, there's been not often, but it's been occasional when I've had them put me there if they felt safe with me. Now, normally people don't know me well enough, but they'll put me there as a safe person, or they'll put Jesus in a bubble. I've got to do something to change the scenario of what I'm feeling at the moment, to change the scenario where I felt then, because nobody did that for me. I have to shift the what was created. So this is, you have a reaction of a hurt, an abuse, and a feeling of being hurt. Then you have to have a reaction. You have to have a counter reaction to be able to counter what I originally felt. Otherwise, I'm not going to let it go because it's who I am. That's just the way I am. No, it's not. That's what you were given. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? I mean, I can go on. Okay, so let's do about this, about the touch, okay? Oftentimes when I'm with a person, I'll have them, obviously, I'll have them tap about here because there's, and I don't normally talk about this, but in my book, I talk about tapping here, all right? But I recommend to have them tap here because there's a pressure point right here. It's really at the end of your clavicle. There's a pressure point. Anybody know how to do EFT, which is emotional freedom technique? We have meridian points all over our body. And when you tap here, it actually releases more. All right. So when you're doing that, that's one way. But I'm feeling the love. If they just need to be hugged, and do the hug. So I've got 3 levels of feeling loved. One is just hug, just have them be hugged by somebody, and then see Jesus there, and people can get healed like automatically because you're adding the element. You're adding another sense. All right. So there's a physical feeling, and then they will see the person hugging them, which changes what they originally went through, creates comfort, which is what Jesus went through, creates safety, and then I can release it, which is what Jesus did. All right. And then the next level, if that doesn't seem to be enough for them, because it's really strong and it's really deeper, I have them will tap back and forth like this. Now, this technique is similar to what God did during creating. This is also in the book, in chapter 10, Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. And what I'm doing is I'm doing the God-given emotional method of releasing, which is REM. So God created us to release. We're not supposed to hold. This is getting into people that are really stuck. I just can't get rid of it. It's because they are not getting rid of it. I'm telling you, I get 100% shift. Nobody leaves my office without being some form, if not all, some level of healing. Some people have a lot of layers. You got to start with some, then they get encouraged. It's because we're holding on to it. I need something stronger to knock it out because I've been living this way for so long. It's so strong, especially people that have had multiple levels or multiple events of trauma. It's so strong. I have a hard time letting it go because it's so much a part of me. All right. So we're tapping like this back or love pat. And the love pat represents this. God created us to release. We release through laughing. You don't realize it. Laughing, crying, sweating, they're all elimination. It's all elimination. And one of the biggest, strongest, most important releases is dreaming. Now, some people don't dream. We all dream. Some people have a harder time because we don't go to the deeper level of dreaming because we're so hyperactive that our mind doesn't get. It's 2 ways of dreaming. One is because I can either it medically happens like too much salt, too much sugar creates a lot of dreaming because it makes my mind active, or it's a matter of relaxing. I can relax to the point where I can just let go of something because there's only 2 reasons for dreaming. And look it up, Google it. The primary reason for dreaming is to release trauma. That's it. God created it that way. to get rid of stuff that we're not getting rid of. The second reason, which is not in, you're not going to find this on Google, is to hear from God. All right. So the primary reason for dreaming is to release trauma. That's why we daydream. That's why we have night terrors. We have nightmares. They're all releasing stuff that we're not letting go of, and our mind has to do something with it. It's saying, I can't hold on to this anymore. We dream during REM. It's rapid eye movement. And what happens is when we dream, this is not new age. God created this. We just don't use, I just happen to work in a field where I learn how the body works. Okay, so our eyes go back and forth like this really, really fast. Interesting enough, when the eyes go to the right, it stimulates the right hemisphere to release emotion. The emotion's on the right side. When it goes to the left, it releases memory. Memory and logic is on the left. Creative side, emotional side is on the right. So when you're doing this, but think about it. That's why when you hug a child, it's going to be okay. You're actually doing REM. You're doing manual REM. So I'm just doing now, it's going to be okay. See Jesus there, see your aunt or your uncle or your grandma giving you a hug or releasing it. Just see yourself letting it go. It's not yours. And what you're doing is you're creating homeostasis. By asking them, you can literally ask them to do this, do a little love hug, a little love pat, seeing Jesus telling you it's going to be okay. Have them describe the trauma. And 50% of them will leave right there just because you're doing REM, which is releasing it. You're doing this. The technical term is called bilateral stimulation. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the and I don't get into this, but because you're an advanced group, have you ever heard of EMDR, which is a secular form of, it's a high functioning form of release that they use. It's called EMDR. It's emotional. It's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Well, you don't have to worry about it, but it's a high. You have to be a mental health professional, and it's thousands of dollars and many days of training to just help a person recognizing all it is what I just described to you. So I just saved you about $4,000. Okay, so all right, so basically, and it's just processing out. And that's what we do, by the way, when you talk to a person. So you say you're talking to a person, you ever see them kind of going back and forth, their eyes going back and forth? That's because they're processing out the information, trying to find it in the different parts of the brain, all right? So, okay, that's the second level, right? Just do that. Have them see Jesus or their parent loving on them, hugging on them. This is all in my chapter 10 of Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. Okay, that's the second higher level, all right, of just helping them release it. Now, if you want to go one more, and again, only because you're in an advanced group, it's really fast. Typically what I do is I'll go back a second time to a church teaching this part, but I'm going to do all three today. It may be a lot, but now the one I'm going to tell you now, it's in this book, How to Pray When Healing Doesn't Happen, all right? Okay, so you'll see under number 10, I'm sorry, 3, it says use love, hug, pat for comfort, giving hurts a safe person, and there's 2 asterisks. And if you go to the bottom, and you see 2 asterisks, says advanced option, open eyes. Now it should be open or close eyes. Open or close eyes to look left or right to find which side the hurtful image feels more intense. Keep using love hug and love pat as you look to intense side to give hurt away. All right, so if they're totally stuck, they're still stuck and they can't let it go. It's because they're holding on to it for a reason. Okay, this is another technique that God gave me, which is what he created. So let me explain something. When we take in trauma, if we don't do anything with it, it has to go somewhere. We store it in our brain. So when information comes into our brain, we store it in one of 6 places in the brain. the upper part of the brain, the right or left, that is the visual side. So it's either I store it up here, visual, right or left. And then the middle part of the brain, it's the right or left audio. And the lower part of the brain is the feeling. So if you have a person, so for example, from now on, this is kind of cool because now that you hear this, you say, oh, you're going to start doing this. When you talk to a person, talk to your spouse or your friend or a family member or your coworker, watch their eyes. So ask them a question. So how long ago was it again that your parents divorced? Let's say you're talking to a client, person in your center. How long ago did your parents divorce? It was, I think, when I was about 6 years old. So when they give you a response, the last place they look is where it was stored in the brain. So that if there's no emotion with it at all, that means they just found the image, they found the information, but they didn't release the emotion. So go back up to where they are looking as they see Jesus and see Jesus in that place. It'll go within minutes because that's where it's stored. I have people, especially if they're visual. That's why I ask them, are you a visual person? You know, sometimes beforehand. When I do ministry around the world and I send them information to set up, I say, are you a visual or emotional? Like visual are people that, visual are always creative people. Like they like photography and music and, you know, they're singers or they're instrument players, that kind of thing. Or, and if they're not that, because it wasn't developed, everybody's got that. Everybody's got something, but some of it's more developed than others, or we're asked to get into it. But if they watch a movie and the movie image sticks with you for days later, you're usually visual. Even if you're not, there's still some of it there. But I have people that are really visual, like they're really creative people, like they're musicians and so on. They play instruments and so on. I'll do this, even if you don't know where it's located. Like you didn't ask him a question, I'll tap like this and I'll say, do something for me. Close your eyes, and then I'll say, I want you to see the image. This is especially if they have the image. If they don't have a good image, it doesn't work as well. You want to just do level 2. So, but the third level is this advanced level. So do you see your dad yelling at you when you were 10 and that really hurt you? You went into your room and cried? Yeah, I see that. What did you feel? I felt really hurt by that and really sad. Okay, I want you to see that little boy really, really sad and hurt. See your dad yelling. So you got the image, you got the feeling. What do you think you might have felt? The 0 to 10? Probably about an 8. Right. So see the little boy, how he was 10 years old. So you get an image, so get an age. You write this down. This is because this is works really fast. This is like if you do this, this stuff will go by really fast. So you get an age. When you get an age, when you work with a child, I always recommend get an age because what that does is it puts it in context. So the more context they have about what they're seeing, and they'll kind of know what that word is like, then it's more real. Then I say, well, see yourself in your room. Try to get a place. So an age, a place, and a feeling, right? And then 0 to 10. So get them out. Sometimes, all right. So those 4 things. That's not really in the book like that, but I kind of learn it as we go along. So an age puts it in context, get a place, and even if they don't know, it just like happens all the time. Where would it happen a lot? Back in the kitchen, right? And see then the feeling would be really, I'd be afraid. I'm like, see myself crying. Well, how much would you feel that? Just guess. Typically, you may not know. What do you think it would be? I'd probably be like a 9. Because see that little boy. Okay, see Jesus there with you, having his arm around, or your grandma having your arm around, giving a little love hug and a love pat. So doing that, you're doing this. And here's what I want you to do. Close your eyes. And then I'm going to have you, I want you to look to the right. just with your eyes, keep your head straight, look to the right, see it over there. See that 10-year-old boy in his bedroom feeling afraid and scared and crying at about an 8. See that. And then look to the right, left. Which side is stronger? Oh, the right. I get a lot of writers. Right. On my right. Okay, see it over there. And just see Jesus giving you a hug. Now, if you want, you can go upper right, middle right, or lower right. I mean, that's even more advanced, but that's why it's specific. The more specific you get, the faster it goes. But if you could just see it on the right, see it on the right, see yourself giving it to Jesus. And then I say, you know what? That hurt was given to you by your dad. That's not yours anymore because it was given to you. That's not who you are. That was so unfair. I'm sorry you had to feel that way. So you be like a dad to them. You be what they never got. And Jesus is there giving the hug, or whoever they can experience, remember, experience comfort from. So if they experience comfort, you're using physical sense, you got a physical sense, you got a visual sense, and then you also have the audio. And guess what? It just goes in minutes. Now, all right, I don't have much time. So I want to do this. I was going to do individual, but I think I'm going to do it with everybody. I don't want everybody to experience this. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to do a group activation and have everybody do this. Okay. So what I want you to do is get comfortable, and you can you can do this on your, if you want, or you could do this, whatever. But I really put the hands here. There you go. All right. And what I want you to do is close your eyes. I'm going to pray first. I'm going to guide you through this like I was in the center with you, and you're a client. So I'm going to pray first. Father in heaven, we thank you what you're going to do during this activation demonstration. We call up the soul stuff. We call up from the depths of their soul what is not theirs that they took on, that they doesn't belong to them anymore, in the name of Yeshua, Jesus. We thank you, Father. Okay, I want everybody, Father, would you bring to each person something in their life that hurt them? There's something they're feeling now. Now, we can either go with something that's hurt you now, and then we take you back to the past, or like a father hurting you, or even or a mother hurting you, or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, or a car accident, or an abuse, or uh, not being picked for a sporting event, or some loss, even like a financial problem, or a demotion in your work, or a big disappointment, or I always get a feeling somebody like a miscarriage. So see having that something that hurts you, all right? Now the second thing I want you to do is find a comfort person. You can have Yeshua, Jesus, you can have Jesus there. Is there somebody else that will comfort you that you could have there? Like an aunt or an uncle or a grandparent, anybody from the past or the present. Could be a friend, could be a pastor. And if not, you can see yourself in this bubble. So I want you, so we'll have that in a minute. I just want you to know if there's somebody, all right? What I want you to do is start tapping back and forth, one hand at a time. Yeah, just back and forth, nice and easy. And so thank you, Father, for that healing that's taking place. I want you to think about that hurt that you had. If you have a hurt now, being like an argument with your spouse now, go back to earlier if spouse problems, or yet your dad yelling. Sometime in your life, Lord, take them each back to a hurt that they had, that they could see that something that happened in their life. And so everybody have an image of something that hurt them, even if it's a knee problem that you got from an accident. I want you to see the image of that accident, see the image of the hurt, see the image of somebody hurting you. Now, what I want you to do is keep your head straight. You can kind of sit so you see the head straight and keep your head still. And then just move your eyes to the right, seeing the image of that while you're tapping back and forth, and see the image of the hurt. And so, in whatever age you were, the place you were at, the feeling that you had, and the amount of feeling that you had. It's 0 to 10. Then look to the left. Now, determine which side you see it stronger, the image of them stronger, on the right side or the left side. And whichever side you see it the strongest, look to that side, the right side or the left side. And then what I want you to do is I want you to keep giving yourself a love pat, seeing Jesus and the comforter comforting you, giving you a love pat. And then see yourself giving that hurt away, because I'm telling you right now, I am saddened that you had to go through that. It's very unfortunate, but what you went through was given to you. The hurt that you're carrying around now has been yours for a long time, and you've been carrying on to it for a long time. And I'm telling you right now, it's not yours anymore. You can give it away to Jesus. You can throw it away. You can put it in a dumpster. You can give it to your safe person, but it's not yours. Just see yourself giving it away. Keep tapping back and forth. Even if you have to tap a little harder and a little faster, it's something that you're knocking out of you. It's not yours anymore. Just let it go. Let it go. Look to that side that you see it or sense it is the strongest. And when you feel like it's letting go, see Jesus there comforting you. So I'm going to pray. This will be number 4. I pray in the name of Yeshua that we release the sight trauma of what you saw, the physical trauma of what you felt, the hearing trauma, which is the ear gate trauma, the cellular memory trauma of what you felt in your cells in your body. We release it in the name of Yeshua Jesus. And we declare, in number 5, we declare your healing, and to the love to declare the healing to your body and your mind in the name of Yeshua Jesus. Thank you, Father, for the total healing in each one of these people. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. When you feel like it's resolved or you feel like it's less, think of the amount of emotion you have now. You have hurt 0 to 10. So you would re-establish it. How much do you feel at 0 to 10? Okay, so what I want you to do now is just think about Jesus giving you a love hug, just hugging on you and him comforting you and letting you know that this is not yours anymore, that you can give it away. It's not yours. Just give it away. All right, why don't we stop now? And then I want to go ahead and stop. Okay, so I wanted to ask, um, so do something for me, actually. I forgot to do this. Anybody have any shifting at all? Anything they noticed, anything, a decrease or a shift? Want to share that with me at all? Any or any questions you have? Now, this is really advanced stuff, and I did all 3 of them at the same time. But what you're really doing is you're helping to show how easy it is to help them be loved by Jesus in a way, with a love hug, and in a way that they're getting comfort, just the way Jesus did, that the Heavenly Father gave to Jesus. And that was the only, until that time, Jesus couldn't let go of that. And he kept on, Jesus was just like us. I mean, he kept on almost arguing with God. He says, God, I don't want to do this. He says, do I have to do this? He did it like 3 times. Now, Luke shows only twice. Matthew shows 3 times. And it went to the disciples 3 times. It wasn't getting to help. So the Heavenly Father finally gave him the comfort he needed. When he got the comfort, he was able to let it go. I don't know how much plainer that is than that. So do you have any questions, any experiences that you want to share with letting it go? Now, I tell you, just by having a person feeling comforted as you're talking to them and seeing Jesus, just add that alone without looking to the left, right. I know that's kind of odd stuff, like, wow, this is really outside the box. Well, that's why I, I've done traditional counseling or traditional prayer for a long time, and I wasn't getting the results I had until I recognized how our body works. Any questions about this? Let me give you one more thing I want to share with you about touch. So if you're ever able to work with a person, and let me go over one more thing about touch. If you're able to, like when I do prayer ministry with people, I'll maybe put my hand on their shoulder, or I'll have another prayer person. I don't know if you have two people in your room. I have another person who's sitting behind them, maybe put their hand on their shoulder to kind of comfort them in some way. Because let me share with this: touch stimulates the sensory nerve endings and brain to produce feel-good chemicals. So in your skin, in 1/4 size, like a 25-cent piece, in your skin, 25 cents worth of skin size, there's 12,000 nerve endings. In one hand, depending on how large your hand is, anywhere from 120 to 200,000 nerve endings. So when you touch the hand, when the hand comfortably, safely touches the body, you're actually activating 120 to 200,000 nerve endings. And what that does is the nerve endings send a signal through your brain stem up into your brain. And here's what it does. This is not a lot of research. Touching stimulates the nerve endings, which sends a signal up, a reaction to the brain. And this is what it does in this order. First, it releases dopamine, which is a neurotransmitter to the adrenaline, which then that releases endorphins, which is a pain suppressor. Then that releases, and that's a pleasure chemical, which releases morphine, which is an opiate, which helps release serotonin, which is a natural antidepressant. All that happens in a millisecond when you touch a person comfortably. So if you were standing in front of a person and said, I want to pray with you, or you stood in front of a person, I'm going to pray with you, which that you're going to make a huge difference. That's why if you pray in pairs, I always like to have a person being touched, right? Or if I'm there with them, just standing there, just praying, and just having them do this, I'm just going to put my hand on their shoulder. So it increases the amount of feel good automatically from what we're doing with them. This is all part of how our body works, how our body reacts. That's a freebie. So I want to give you as much as you can. This is a fast and furious. This is typically a 4-hour session, a 4-hour, So I'm planning on coming down there sometime. Mike and I are working on something one of these months, and I'll come down and we'll do something longer, and then we could do it. Now you all have my email somewhere. If you have any questions, I think it's on your it's on your sheet on the prayer card. Or, no, it's not. Anyway, you should have it's somewhere in your information. If you have any questions, it's Talk with Craig at Insights, talkwithcraig@juno.com. And I do recommend to also go on my website, which is insightsfromtheheart.com. Insights with an S, insightsfromtheheart.com. I've got a lot of videos on there, a lot of information, a lot of testimonials, a lot of teaching videos and so on. And even on the bottom, go to the 4th tier down and go to How to Pray When Healing Doesn't Happen. I teach this, and there's like, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 videos. So they're short, like 10 to 15 minutes, teaching this, elaborating on what I'm telling you. So if you want to go over more, if you want to learn more, go to those videos, and then it goes over this a little bit more in detail than what I've been able to do today. So with about five, anybody have any questions so far? I know it's a lot of information, a lot of advanced stuff, and I hope you're able to retain some of it. Anybody have any questions? Yeah,
And we'll-
definitely read the book. It'll help a lot, especially chapters 1 through 5 and 10 in Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing. That'll help a lot, go over a lot of what I talked about. That's the meat, 1 through 5 and chapter 10. And then for sure, then go into read this book, How to Pray and Healing Doesn't Happen, which is a lot more in depth. And it's really about what I've said here, but makes more sense about what you do if this happens. I don't like methods per se, but it's some kind of order about what to do when different things happen. And you're going to get a lot of results. If you have any questions about it, just email me and I'll be glad to share, try this, try that. If there's somebody you've been meeting with and you try a couple of different things, I'll tell you where, maybe what to try differently, so on. All right. And if anybody, another way, another great way to actually learn this is to have it done to yourself. So I do this online. You can email me and I put you on a waiting list. I do have I have a waiting list right now, but it's within about 1 to 4 weeks. I just got on my list to try to find what was available. And I'll send you information about, are you questions, and you answer the questions to set up the prayer time. It's about an hour. I don't charge for this time, but I do recommend if you want to sow into my ministry, people after the prayer time can sow into it. And everybody gets healed to some level, right? And I teach you how to do this. One other thing, in the back of this book, Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing, on page 190 is the self-care prayer. So what I taught you here, if you want to do this to yourself, go to that. 190 and 191 is a self-care prayer. On page 38, I'm sorry, 83 is doing it to other people, basically. And then 190 in this book is doing it for yourself. It's somewhat the same, but there's a little different variation because you're doing it to yourself. And it's basically what I'm talking about now, and you get a lot of results. I always get results because of moving in a way that your body is created, and how your body works, how God created our bodies, and what God wants us to release. Because whatever is not there, whatever is not of God is not yours to keep. So, all right. And the other thing is when you pray with somebody, don't worry about whether you have a response or not. Just let God work through that person, asking for more information about what was like when they're there. And just let them talk it out as they just do, seeing Jesus give them a little love hug. It'll process itself out. You don't have to do a whole lot. It'll process it out for you because the body doesn't want it. That's why we're releasing it. You can release it, but you have to give them a safe environment to release it in. All right. Okay.
I have a question.
I have a question. You held up another book. And what was that third book that you held up, the name of that book?
Well, there's 2 books. Well, I've got a total of 6 books out there. Okay. But the 2 books that I recommend for this is the one is Breaking Emotional Barriers to Healing, right? You all should have. And then the second one after that, it's a teaching book, which is a lot of the how-to, is how to pray and healing doesn't happen. Now, I mentioned when feelings don't come easy.
Feelings don't come
All right.
easy.
And I think Mike bought some. I think you have some there. And it's about when feelings don't come easy, how to generate feelings. I work with a lot of people that came from homes where feelings were not talked about, not encouraged, and they don't do it as an adult. And so we're very stifled, and we don't have good relationships because I can't communicate well about how I'm feeling. And there's a lot of depression with that because a lot of ailments, comes out of not being able to express myself to get it out. And so I talk a lot about how to do that, how to reverse that. And in that book is about the relationship between an earthly father and a heavenly father and the importance of that. Another book that I wrote that's really, oh, the other book I mentioned was um, when your mate's emotionally unavailable. That's okay. So back in the 90s, when God gave me these people that were not feeling, I wrote the book When Feeling Some Come Easy. Well, the way God is, if you start doing something for God, He wants you to do more. So after I wrote that book, He started sending me all the spouses that were married to these people that I couldn't feel. So then I started working with all the spouses that were married to the unfeeling spouses. So then I wrote the book When Your Mate's Emotionally Unavailable. So anyway, and then I wrote the book, which another really good one is Declaring Your Worth. The biggest issue that's out there is not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy. And so and there's a smaller book, it's more of a devotion, but there's a lot of prayer, how to get out of that too. So anyway, and then the next book after that is Finding Victory and Healing Doesn't Happen, the one I wrote with Randy Clark. So, all right. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Hey, the weather is really nice up here. Just want to let you know. So, it's really sunny out there. So, I'm just letting you know that you're not the only place that has good weather. But ask me in about 3 months, and then I don't want to talk to you. Okay? I
Thank
live in Michigan. Then don't tell me how nice it is down there. All right. All right. God bless you all.